Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion, talking about Tropical Storm Michael in the Gulf of Mexico. And let's start off with a satellite animation here from the Tropical Tidbits website. This was well advertised for several weeks that this area would be favorable, and here we go. We have a strengthening tropical storm starting to get that look there, that curved, banded look, where it's going to take off once that central core starts to really consolidate, and we're going to see quite a strong hurricane out of this, already bringing some impacts, of course, to parts of Cuba here, the Florida Keys, cloud cover extending up in indirect relation to the storm over the peninsula of Florida, and conditions will just start to deteriorate on up the coast here with the arrival of swells, higher surf, and an increasing tide ahead of what will be a hurricane probably by later today. So what I want to do is kind of just go over the latest from the National Hurricane Center and then take a look at some things that can help you if you live along the path of this system, anywhere along here, and then of course up through the region where it will be tracking after landfall. So if we look at the 8 a.m. Eastern Time intermediate advisory information, we get that from the public advisory. Winds are still 70 miles per hour. The pressure down to 982. So the pressure has dropped from 997 last night to 982 today. That is quite an impressive lowering of the central pressure, strong enough to be a hurricane, and the winds will catch up to that fairly soon, I do believe, and we'll have a hurricane. All right, so tropical storm, hurricane watch, tropical storm warning, storm surge watch. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and I'm going to show you how you can kind of boil all that down to your local area and make sense of it all. But for the purpose of this discussion, I want to point out a few things that are very important. Right now, it's not a hurricane yet, but once it does, we will have an additional line right here that'll say hurricane force winds extend out X miles from the center. But right now, tropical storm force winds extend outward up to 175 miles. So, and that's mostly to the east from what I understand, this has a large wind field, and so it's going to do two things. It will affect a large area, and it'll push water ahead of itself over a pretty great distance, and that's going to allow that storm surge to really pile up, and that is mentioned here in the hazards affecting land. Indian Pass to Crystal River, 7 to 11 feet. If that does not motivate you to evacuate and make sure you save your life, then I don't know what else will. And if it gets strong and approaches Category 3, I expect that these numbers here will start to go up, and we'll see some approaching 15 feet. This area is very vulnerable to storm surge, so in my opinion, this part right here is the most important aspect of Michael in terms of risk to loss of life. Pardon my semi-cold, and let me tell you, it's way sounding worse than it is. Believe me, it's just this aggravating kind of, almost like an allergy. Other than that, I feel great. Believe it or not. So bear with me. Hopefully 8 hours of sleep tonight once I get to Florida will cure all ails. Okay, so this really, really big. So please, 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 7 to 11 feet. I do not know anybody personally in my circle of friends, and I don't even think I've ever met somebody who is 7 feet tall. And I know few people, just a handful of them that are 6 feet tall or taller. And I mean, look, even in the Tampa Bay, the Anclote River to Anna Maria Island, including Tampa Bay, a 2 to 4 foot rise in the water level. All right, so this is very serious, no doubt about it. The wind, that'll also be a problem. Obviously, hurricane conditions, rainfall will definitely have an impact on Cuba the Keys, the Yucatan, and into the southeast. We will look at the rainfall here more and more over the next couple of days, because this will have implications on what happens in the interior portions of the southeast United States. So let's go back and let me just show you. I bring you information. I'm just trying to guide you. I also want to train you to look for stuff on your own. Where can you find these nuggets of information that are going to help you? And the National Hurricane Center at nhc.noaa.gov, everybody should know this, or just hurricanes with an S, hurricanes.gov. And you got the home page, and you have the different areas of the storms that are out there and hurricanes. And so when you look at Michael and you look at all these different products that are out there, to summarize it all, there's your key messages, all right? So this is very, very helpful. We have a very busy lifestyle with very short attention spans and a lot of distractions. This can be very helpful. And then you break it down to wind speed probabilities, the rainfall potential. Let's just look at this for a moment. Yes, the Carolinas, where we just really started drying out in earnest after Florence, 2 to 4 inches, with this one stripe in here in the Sandhills area of 4 to 6 inches. Okay, so this is problematic. Some of these areas down here close to landfall, it's a little bullseye right there, 10 to 15 friggin' inches of rain. I mean, the rain is really starting to become an issue. I don't know. We don't have time to get into the whole climate change thing here, but it seems that we have a lot more rainfall, flooding incidences as of late. I don't know. Story for another day, but at least this one's going to be moving quickly, but 10 to 15 inches of rain, yeah, that's going to be a problem too, on top of any surge that comes in. Then the flash flooding potential, as we move through time, will be moderate down here along the panhandle of Florida and southwest Georgia. Remember how I have been saying that this is an inland risk as well. This is your hurricane too, so to speak, that I have mentioned here for interior Georgia, the Carolinas, and up through and just offshore. This won't just end at landfall. So you folks in interior Georgia, South Carolina, the coastal areas of the Carolinas and Georgia, and honestly, even the east coast of Florida here, especially as it comes through this area, you could get some banding that comes on shore. I don't think that it'll extend as far south as, say, St. Augustine, but it could. Depends on what kind of bands set up, trying to feed this eventual hurricane. So what I need you to do is anybody along the peninsula here, from about Lake Okeechobee and Alligator Alley north, really pay attention to this. The threat of tornadoes, any of those bands that set up, and you know what those look like. They come curling in. You remember Irma, it really sent some nasty bands on shore from way off in the Atlantic, all right? So pay attention to that. Interior areas, such as Ocala, the Villages, as an example, Zephyr Hills, up towards Gainesville, Lake City. As this approaches, yes, those bands could come across the state, and that could produce a brief tornado or 2 or 3, and you just don't know when that could happen. So everybody outside of the cone, which is only telling us where the probabilities are that the center will be, the cone tells us nothing of impact. Not a single thing. Nothing. The cone is about the center of circulation and where it is likely to be based on past experience and success with past forecasts, etc. So this is a problem for a large area over here, not just where you see that cone of uncertainty. So please keep that in mind. All right, so the forecast, as we have seen, hopefully you looked at the discussion. If you haven't, you need to read this. This is very technical at times, but it's very helpful. This gets you into the mind of the forecaster, and in this case, it's Mr. Robert Berg. I have met most of the Hurricane Center forecasters over the years, and this is written by a real person, okay? And it tells you the reasoning behind their forecast. And the bottom line is, as you can see here, we're looking at nearly a Category 3 hurricane at landfall. And that's important because major hurricanes create major damage. They really do. But even a 80 or 100 mile per hour hurricane can bring a significant storm surge, and that's what's noted in this third bullet point here, 2 portions of the Florida coast there in the Big Bend region. So don't focus on the category too much, but in this case, the wind, the Saffir-Simpson scale for wind, could become an issue where you start losing buildings because of wind, not just surge and not just from heavy rainfall like we saw with Florence. In my opinion, Florence would have been a Category 5 because of rain. But that's another story for another day. If you had to assign the highest category of the most impactful aspect of a hurricane, Florence would have been a 5. Harvey would have been a 5. Katrina for the surge would have been a 5. There's a little taste of what I'm going to lobby for in the future. So in this case, in my opinion, the surge 7 to 11 feet, that's catastrophic in my opinion. And I would say this is a Category 5 in terms of the level of importance to save your life. Saffir-Simpson scale, knocking on the door of Category 3, and that is for wind only. All right, so keep that in mind. So some areas that are going to be impacted, it just depends on where the center crosses the coast. If it's up here, and we're talking just the center of circulation, the eye, if it's east of Panama City Beach, going to push a tremendous surge up into this Big Bend area, including Cedar Key. Tampa Bay will have that onshore flow, and the threat of a really dangerous surge exists all throughout this region. And then, of course, heavy rainfall, wind damage, trees down, power outages. Travel will be very difficult. Interstate 95 coming down through here, and then I-10 west, that's going to be problematic. Through Florida, again, the central area, Orlando, a lot of this is going to depend, like I mentioned, on those bands that try to come across, and there's no way to predict that ahead of time. So my plan is to leave Wilmington right up here in the next few hours and head down this way, stopping in Panama City Beach tonight, and we will assess things from there. I'll be working with several people, both in the field and behind the scenes, to cover this future hurricane. And the way we will be doing that, public updates, I'll be producing these video discussions at least once per day, and sometimes I'll just do one in the vehicle. We're going to be using sort of what we call our backup Chevy Tahoe. You remember the Tahoe that we've had for all those years with all the weather equipment on it? Well, that doesn't work anymore. It's been mothballed, as we say. But last year we purchased another one. A good friend of mine helped me with that. And it's the exact same year, make, model, and everything. It's like a clone. But it has half the miles, never been in a hurricane. And we were going to use it for parts and maybe roll it into operation if the other one failed. Well, that's exactly what happened. The other one finally gave out. And so I'm going to be using the backup Tahoe. It's still a 17-year-old vehicle. It doesn't have any of the gadgets on the roof or anything like that. It does have my logo on there, the Hurricane Intercept Research Team logo. It looks a lot like this, so that we can be identified as people that know what we're doing. But anyway, we're going to be bringing that, and I'll be able to do updates from the vehicle. I've got a driver. His name is Brent, the same gentleman that came up from St. John to help out during Florence. And I met Brent because of YouTube and Patreon. He's one of our patrons, and he is helping to support, which is what patrons do, right? Remember the patrons that helped get some of the playwrights off the ground back in the Shakespeare days? Well, that's exactly the same principle. So Brent's going to be helping out. Carrie from Houston's coming. Derek from South Dakota is coming down. He is a severe storms enthusiast and scientist with an incredible mesonet on top of his vehicle, big GMC truck, I believe it is. So we're going to have a lot of us there. We're hoping to launch the weather balloon in the eye if it's daytime and safe to do so. But our coverage will consist of putting up to and hopefully all 4 live cameras somewhere along the coast. We're going to be working on where, and then we're going to stick recording devices, GoPros, that have a long battery life, etc., that'll run for anywhere from 26 to 70 hours, depending on if it's time lapse or real-time video, and 1 weather station. We lost 1 of 2 in the storm surge, well, the actual computer part, in Florence. Actually, we didn't think the surge would get as high as it did, but it did. That was up in Porter's Neck, North Carolina. But we'll have 1 weather station, and all of this will be available in our app, which is on the App Store, Hurricane Impact, and I'm happy to say I have put it back on the Google Play Store because we have figured out how to get the live video to work. So if you have Hurricane Impact already on an Android device, make sure it's the most recent version, and if it's not and it's several years old, we got rid of the very old one. It's just completely out of date, and yes, you might have to purchase the new one. I mean, it's $4. I mean, I'm not asking for $100 or anything. It supports what we do here. I got to earn a living from this, right? And I bring you, and this is where I really sleep good at night knowing what I do. I bring you stuff that nobody else is doing. There are a lot of hurricane chasers, and they do a great job. But we're doing it live in multiple locations, immersing you in the action unlike anything that anybody else can physically do. It's not an indictment against their skill set or whatever. You cannot film storm surge of 11 feet in the storm surge, or you will die. But these remote cameras can and have. And if you've seen it, all right? I've got a track record, so I'm going to boast a little bit here. So get the app if you don't have it, Hurricane Impact, on the App Store, 2 words, and on Google Play. And it's, should work for 95% of you, if not more. There's always something that'll come up. Somebody's settings are off, or they have their little volume thing turned down, and I can't hear anything. It's broken. Half of it's not my fault, but once in a while a bug will be in there that we didn't know about. But for 95% of the people, and that's a pretty good percentage, right? That's an A plus, it'll work. So get that. I'll be posting information and videos on Twitter. That's free, all right? I don't charge money for everything. And of course, our patrons, our awesome patrons, will have sort of exclusive behind the scenes looks at what we're doing through the Lens feature on Patreon. So if you're not a patron yet, hey, now's a great time to get on board and help support innovative, absolutely incredible, one-of-a-kind hurricane coverage. I do these discussions like a lot of other people do. There are several people that do these types of discussions, but find me somebody else that actually then goes out into the field and nails it like we do, and I'm the guy behind it, but I have a team, and boy, am I proud of it, and I'm ready. All right, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it well, and I'm very happy to have you with us. All right, so that's the end of my discussion, my commercial for our products. I want you to be safe. I want you to take action and not ignore these warnings and say, well, hopefully this thing will weaken. Hopefully it will, but hope by itself, not a planning tool. Preparation and action, that's what you need to be doing. So I'll be leaving here in a few hours. Brent will be driving. Off we'll head down to Florida. Along the way, I'll keep you updated, and I'll have another thorough discussion in the evening time tonight. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks as always for tuning in. Oh yeah, by the way, tomorrow during the day we will be streaming live on YouTube, so look forward to that. Have a great rest of your Monday. I'll talk at you again in a few hours.